Is week 8, so welcome to class 8 of Hope. We have this class and then next week's class in terms of like content that I'm teaching you, and then the week after that, so our last week on the 16th is going to be more of an open discussion, conversation, hearing from you all what you have learned so far, what you've appreciated. So there's again the 6 questions that I'm going to ask that are already on the Google Classroom from last week's slides that I already shared. I can put them up in separate questions too in the Google Classroom. You do not have to come already having prepared these answers or some presentation. I'm going to give you time during the last class before we begin just to have time to sit and reflect and answer the questions. I don't want you to feel like you have more work, but I know that sometimes some people like to have questions before, so they will be available for you before if you want time to think through them, but no pressure and no need to before we come into class. So today's agenda and topic is art and symbols of resistance, and how art has been used as a form of resistance or a tool of resistance by Palestinians specifically. And there's a lot of reasons why people turn to art and why they need, why they choose art as a way of their intervention in the struggle for Palestine. And we're going to hear from a lot of different people through videos today about how they do that and why they do that. But I wanted to start us off with some discussion questions just to see where we are all at, how familiar you guys are with this, what you think about art as a form of resistance. So the 3 questions I want us to start, I want to hear from all of you is, how have you seen art used as a form of resistance? If you haven't, that's fine too. Do you think it's a useful tool? Do you think it's something that does make an impact, does make a difference, just from what you know so far? And then why or why not? And we can revisit this last question of, is it useful, towards the end, and maybe we'll see if any of your minds changed in case you've said no. But to start off with the first question, how have you, if you have, seen art used as a form of resistance? And this doesn't have to be just for Palestine, it could be in general if you've seen it used. If anyone wants to start us off.
Sorry, did somebody speak?
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the first time I've seen, the first thing that comes to my head when I think of art as a form of resistance is the painting of the Boston Massacre, when Great Britain kind of had their root in America and people blew it out of proportion, where they had like a line of soldiers firing at civilians, and they used that as propaganda to show attention to the matter, and it was effective. So I do think it is a useful tool.
Yeah, that's a really interesting example, actually, because it can be used in both ways, from the resistors or from people, other sides. But you are right, the way that it brought attention to what was happening in like a different way is really impactful. Thanks, Amir. Anyone else? Beckett, I don't know, did you unmute at the same time?
Oh, I did. I was gonna say I don't remember like an example top of my head, but I think it's useful in the sense that it reaches like a sort of like a different crowd that usually doesn't like pay attention to maybe the news, or that usually don't like use social media.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? Because sometimes we think, and I think we kind of talked about this already, and we'll talk about it more next week. Sometimes we think that there's one way that you're supposed to be an activist, or one way only that you can support Palestine. And if you're not in poli-sci or advocating in DC, then you can't do anything. But I think what artists show us is that in their own ways and in their capacities, they do, and they can have an impact on Palestine. And I think that's something I want all of you to think about as you're figuring out what sector in society and what careers you want to go into, being creative enough and imagining ways to include Palestine in all of that. Because, we know Palestine is going to be liberated. It's just a matter of when and how. And I think the how is for all of us to figure out. Cool, thanks, Beckett. Anyone else? Either examples of how you've seen it and whether or not you think it's useful. Maybe thinking about the US, 2020, the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, COVID. Did we see any forms of art in those moments, or a lot of what's happening in Palestine in 2021, Sheikh Jarrah, recently? It's okay if you haven't, but I want to just see if I can refresh those memories. And I guess what I'm thinking of something specific, and what I'm thinking of is, so when George Floyd was murdered in 2020, I don't know if any of you noticed, but there was a lot of solidarity from Palestinians and from people in Palestine to the Black community here, because they know what it means to be victims of military and police violence just because of who you are, your identity, color, your skin. And Black Palestinian solidarity is something that's existed for a very long time, since the 1960s. And now that you all know that in the 60s, the Naksa happened. So, that was a key moment, the Naksa and the civil rights movement in the US were both in the late 60s. And that was a key moment of bringing both communities together, and Malcolm X and a lot of other Black freedom fighters and revolutionaries starting to have more of an international lens. So from back then, there's been a lot of art has been used as a way to show solidarity as a form of resistance, because they're not necessarily in the same place. And before the convenience of social media, and even with the convenience of social media, Palestinians have used art to also show their solidarity with other struggles. And so in 2020, someone painted a really big mural as a way to pay honor to and to pay honor to George Floyd. So they painted a really big mural of George Floyd on the apartheid wall in Palestine. And just by that, it was an obvious showcase of we are in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement in the US, and we mourn and honor George Floyd. And you could just, without having to say any words, that mural showed that solidarity at that time. And it was very much appreciated, and, it's all over social media. So I think that is another way that we can think of art as a way that we can show, as people who advocate for Palestine, our understanding of other people's struggles too. So any last thoughts about, if you think it's useful, why or why not, before I move on? And again, we'll revisit this point. I guess, does anyone think it's not useful? Because that would be interesting to revisit towards the end. And it's okay if you don't think it's useful. Okay, so I'll move us along. And I'm gonna show a lot more videos for today, just because I want to highlight the artists and the art that we are talking about, forms of art. But I'm gonna pause in between and just check in and see some of your, ask for some of your thoughts, especially the later videos that are, it was highlighting Palestinian people a bit more. So the first way that I want to show and highlight Palestinian art is through music. And I think, sometimes we don't situate music and spoken word and poetry with art because we think more of visual art. But to me, I would identify this as a form of art. And a lot of people, so I have two different examples. One is someone who is in the diaspora. She's a Palestinian woman named Shadia Mansour. She is a Palestinian rapper, and that is how she has dedicated her life to the struggle of Palestine, is through her music and her political rap. Omar Efendim is also I think he's Syrian, but he is also in the music industry and uses his music to bring attention to a lot of Arab struggles and issues. I think he's Syrian, so he definitely focuses on like the Syrian civil war and what's been happening right now. And they collaborated to put the song out. And it is in Arabic. I don't know if the subtitles will work or will even make sense. So if you don't understand Arabic, I'm sorry, and I can translate. But I just want you all to listen to it and let me know what you all think, because usually rap and Palestine get a little controversial in our community. So I'm interested to see what you think. And then this second video is a newer I guess, yeah, I think it's more recent. And it's a duo, and these two people have come together to like bridge a lot of, the way I see it is bridge a lot of older generation Palestinian songs into today's like generation and make it something that everyone can follow along with. So we'll listen to both and we'll see what you guys think.
We are facing the end of the destruction of the Palestinian people by the Israeli forces. We are in a situation today that not only the political and the economical infrastructure was destroyed, Israel is destroying the neurological system of the society.
والله ما عاد في خيار، يلي بهمه مستقبل العالم كله إلا لا ضرر ولا ضرار. من عمر الفاروق لثورة عمر المختار، هالجملتين اللي أيدوا الازدهار. فعمي خد قرار مشان ما تصفي لوحدك بالغبارة، وع سفينة الحياة بين الجزيرة والمنار. يلي محتار يطفي تلفزيونه، واللي ما بيعيش بدونه لك الله يكون بعونه. قرن 21 بدت بالزلازل، عواصف وقنابل دمرت أبراج بابل. دم العرب لسه سائل دائما، فيش حدا سائل، وهيدي مشكلتنا. فتنا بالفتنة ونسينا أسرتنا. لا تكون أناني، فكر بخيك، فكر ببيك، وتذكر يلي بحكي زيك. حتى أولادك وأحفادك يمشوا بخيك، وإذا حاسس صدرك عم يتضيق خدلك نفس خيك وقوم تغير.
So I'm going to pause that one there. You can obviously watch the rest of it. I'll also put all these on the Google Classroom, but any initial thoughts about what they're trying to do with the song, if you can understand the Arabic. If not, I can try to translate some of it. And then not just with the song, but I think with the whole music video too, because there's a lot with the graphics. So what do you all think they're trying to do with this? Or just did you like it or not like it too? Because I've shown this a couple of times and I get mixed reactions. It's okay if you guys don't like it. That's where this is coming from.
Well, I guess it's not necessarily like not liking, but it just sounds different. I've never heard it before in my life, so
Were you
this is
able
different.
were you able to pick up what they're trying to like show or say with the song?
Sort of, yeah. It's like, I mean, sort of. Some of the words made sense, yeah, but I wasn't able to get like the bigger picture of what they're trying to say.
Yeah, so I mean, from my understanding, I think what they're trying to do is, and it is different, you're right, but this genre actually exists. There's a lot of people who especially Arabs and Palestinians so if you like this type of genre, there's a lot of people that you can listen to, like the Arab political rap. I think the main thing that they're trying to do here, and I think the reason that it's in Arabic specifically, because she does have songs, and most of them are in Arabic and English, but I think this one being in Arabic specifically is more like an internal call out for our community. You know, like he said, like, don't be selfish, wake up, watch the news. Like, so they're trying to call people in and tell them to pay attention to what's happening, and that he says that we're in the 21st century and this stuff is still happening to our people. And you know, the land, she's saying like the land is going away and we're not doing anything. So I see this as more of like a, you know, we have to, she's saying we have to change, we have to do something about our own state. And I think that's how I've understood as why it's fully in Arabic too. And you can tell just from some of the visuals of the music video, like she's wearing a thobe with tatriz. They're showing images of like Palestinian women tatriz. They're showing images of what's happening on the ground. They're showing, you know, little TV snippets of news, and all those are intentional of what's happening. So I think the music videos correlate a lot with the words of it. But this is just one way that I think she's based in Europe. I'm not sure where Ahmed Efendim is. I think he's based in the US. Just ways that people in the diaspora, now that we all know that word, are able to support and have a role in the struggle for Palestine. So even if you're not there, there are things that you can pick up and do. So we'll listen to this. I think most of you have probably heard this music, some of the songs in here. I think they're both in Palestine, and the music video is also in Palestine, but I might be wrong, but we'll just watch a little bit of it. I'm gonna stop this one there. It's a great mashup to listen to and play, especially if you have some event or just something for Palestine. I'm sure you have all heard one or two or most of these songs at like weddings or hennas, people doing dabke to them. They explain, you could tell in the music video, if you saw at the bottom, like they say like what each song is used for. I think the main importance of this is, I think it's really great how these are all like, I guess, more Palestinian folklore songs, older songs, or just parts of Palestinian history. And I think what's cool is that they are preserving it, right? And they're, you know, maybe it's a new sound, it's new people singing it, but they're keeping these folklores and these songs alive. And these songs all have a lot of cultural and somewhat political meaning to them. So especially Ya Zarifatul has, the reason it's so popular and it's used so much is that there's a very symbolic and significant meaning to the song. And so what they're doing is they're taking something that might be left behind of Palestinian culture, overseen because of the struggle, and actually holding onto it as a form of preserving Palestinian art and music and culture. So I think that's just a really cool and important thing that they do with a skill that they have, which is singing and music. So I want to take us to spoken word and poetry now. I am someone who definitely loves spoken word and poetry. I don't know, you know, depending on who you are, if it's your thing or not. But I want to just highlight two of my favorite Palestinian spoken word artists. Rami Kanazi is in Brooklyn, so he's also someone who's in the diaspora, you know, using his platform, using his skill to talk about Palestine. Rafeef Ziadi is, I don't know, I think she's based in London now, but she did live and grow up in Palestine, and she uses this as a way to showcase her story. She might still be in Palestine. I'm not too sure. I don't want to tell you all the wrong thing. But they're both some of my favorite pieces. So we'll just listen to them. And then if you have any questions, we can answer them.
I'll start with this poem. I wrote this poem when the bombs were dropping on Gaza, and I was the media spokesperson for the coalition, doing a lot of the organizing. And we had stayed up to about 6 o'clock in the morning, perfecting every soundbite. And by the end, if you're Palestinian, you know most Palestinians get tired and start pronouncing our P's as B's. So we become Palestinians by the end of the day. So I was practicing my P's all night. And the next morning, one of the journalists asked me, "Don't you think it would all be fine if you just stopped teaching your children to hate?" I did not insult the person. I was very polite. But I wrote this poem as a response to these types of questions we Palestinians always get. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre that had to fit into sound bites and word limits, filled enough with statistics to counter measured response. And I perfected my English and I learned my UN resolutions. But still, he asked me, "Ms. Ziada, don't you think everything would be resolved if you would just stop teaching so much hatred to your children?" Pause. I look inside of me for strength to be patient, but patience is not at the tip of my tongue as the bombs drop over Gaza. Patience has just escaped me. Pause. Smile. We teach life, sir. Rafeef, remember to smile. Pause. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians teach life after they have occupied the last sky. We teach life after they have built their settlements and apartheid walls. After the last skies, we teach life, sir. But today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits. And just give us a story, a human story. You see, this is not political. We just want to tell people about you and your people. So give us a human story. Don't mention that word apartheid and occupation. This is not political. You have to help me as a journalist to help you tell your story, which is not a political story. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre. How about you give us a story of a woman in Gaza who needs medication? How about you? Do you have enough bone-broken limbs to cover the sun? Hand me over your dead and give me the list of their names in 1,200 word limits. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre made to fit into sound bites and word limits and move those that are desensitized to terrorist blood. But they felt sorry. They felt sorry for the cattle over Gaza. So I give them UN resolutions and statistics, and we condemn and we deplore and we reject. And these are not two equal sides, occupier and occupied, and 100 dead, 200 dead, and 1,000 dead. And between that war crime and massacre, I vent out words and smile, not exotic. Smile, not terrorist. And I recount 100 dead, 200 dead, 1,000 dead. Is anyone out there? Will anyone listen? I wish I could wail over their bodies. I wish I could just run barefoot in every refugee camp and hold every child, cover their ears so they wouldn't have to hear the sound of bombing for the rest of their life the way I do. Today, my body was a TV'd massacre, and let me just tell you, there is nothing your UN resolutions have ever done about this. And no soundbite I come up with, no matter how good my English gets, no soundbite will bring them back to life. No soundbite will fix this. We teach life, sir. We teach life, sir. We Palestinians wake up every morning to teach the rest of the world life, sir.
So the reason I really like this poem of hers is that, she's saying this journalist is talking to her and he's like, I don't want to hear all the political stuff. Just tell me a story of someone who died in Gaza, or, he's saying like, he basically just wants the humanitarian vision or portion of thinking about Palestinians. And he's not, what she wants to do is like, we're more than just that. And we're more than just people who die that you report on as just numbers and statistics that need to fit in some like little report and like your data, right? She's saying we're more than that. And then her response, the reason she's saying we teach life is that he's telling her, well, you guys are the ones that teach hate, right? You don't want peace. You want to talk badly or teach hate about Israel or Zionism. But what she's saying is actually because of everything Palestinians have had to endure and still exists, that what they are teaching is life, and that's what should be reported on for Palestinians. So she has a lot of other great poems. So if you appreciate this stuff, definitely look her up. She's very well known. The second one of Remy, he has a whole book. I think it's called When the Last Bomb Drops in Brooklyn or something like that. But he has a book of poetry also, and he performs, and he's also very well known. He has a really big social media following too, where he posts updates about what's happening in Palestine. And then in this one, what he's really, what I want you to listen to is the way that he's calling people to not stay silent and to be involved and to do something about what's going on.
This poem will not end apartheid. My words, no matter how beautiful, clever, or carefully strung together, will not end the occupation, allow the refugees to return, or create equality within Israeli society. The status quo was a fantasy, telling us it's okay to sit on our hands, called political art propaganda, rather than those who politicize our lives, propagandists. Every American Brit should ask themselves this question: why are bombs and white phosphorus getting dropped on open-air prisons with money that should be going to pay for your medical expenses? And dear academics and leftists, I appreciate your books on Israeli massacres, but you refuse to take the bullets out of IDF guns with your stances. The problem is not just the occupation or putting a better face on Zionism, because 750,000 Palestinians were displaced before those settlements were constructed, half of them before Israel was created. We don't need another book explaining the situation. We need a lesson plan to stop the next bomb from dropping.
Here, I'm going to stop his there for the sake of time, but I think we get the point. Poetry and spoken word historically have always been used for social justice issues and definitely have been used by Palestinians. And if that is something that you like or are interested in, definitely recommend that you get involved in that. Does this. The next part of art being used for as tool of resistance. So I want to take us to Gaza, and just so Gaza, if you all remember, is what is called an open air prison, right? It's food, water, and electricity are all controlled by Israeli forces and the government. They're not allowed to go in or out of the Gaza Strip. So it's a complete like land and sea blockade. Everything is controlled in terms of movement by Israel. And I think it was Al Jazeera or had put that by 2020, Gaza was actually supposed to be unlivable because of the conditions. And every year, unfortunately, Gaza does get bombed, usually around this time, actually right before Ramadan in May. In June, Gaza has a large resistance movement. Sometimes they will retaliate against Israel when things in the West Bank happen. That's been more recent, where we see Gaza and the West Bank actually in some ways metaphorically speaking to each other and being attacked at the same time and in similar ways. So because life and conditions are so hard in Gaza, and the point is to make it so hard that, and this is very gruesome and sad, but the point is to just really be able to get rid of all the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip by killing them off, by blockading them, so that Israel can also just take over and have the Gaza Strip as theirs. But as we know, Palestinians are very resilient and strong and have not stopped existing in Gaza and have found a lot of ways to make life more livable there. And one of them is art.
We have a few hours left until we leave Gaza, and I always really wanted to do a video about something that impressed me so much about this place, which is the graffiti and street art that's visible across all the walls in the whole strip. Some real meaningful stuff. And we're lucky enough to have our very own Bilal Khaled, a famous Palestinian calligrapher, artist, and photographer. He was born and raised here in Gaza, and he's been away for 4 years. So let's go and see what he's up to. بلبل حبيب قلبي حبيبي عامل ايه؟ قول لنا بقى ايه ازاي اتعلمت الرسم ده وايه الهدف ورا الرسم اللي انت بتعمله؟
فن الخط العربي او فن الكاليغرافي انا تعلمته من انا عمري 12 سنه تقريبا او 13 سنه. كنت دائما بروح عند خطاطين، عند محلات من اللي بيعملوا اللوحات التجاريه والاشياء هاي بالخط العربي. بقعد بتفرج كيف الخطاط بيستخدم الريشه، كيف بيستخدم البوصه، كيف بيكتب، ايش الالوان اللي بيستعملها. فحبيت وتعلقت جدا في الخط العربي. ومن وانا صغير انا كنت بحب اخربش على الحيطان في المدرسه على الديسكات. فكنت شويه يعني في علاقه بيني وبين الحيطان من وانا صغير. فانا حبيت ادخل الخط العربي مع الجرافيتي، فبلشت اشتغل فن الكاليغرافي اللي هو فن تحوير الخطوط واستخدامها في فن الجرافيتي.
دي لغه الجدران، يعني اللي انت ايه ترسم حاجه على حيطه ليها معنى كبير. فانت بالنسبه لك دي يعني انت مثلا عايز تكون سفير اللغه دي في العالم كله؟
والله أنا حاب أكون سفير بلدي، سفير فلسطين للعالم من خلال الفن هذا. يعني أحاول أوصل رسالة شعبي من خلال فن الجرافيتي وفن الكاليغرافي. أحاول إنه أنشر هذه الثقافة وهذا الفن في كل أنحاء العالم. الحمد لله يعني أصبح الآن كثير من متابعيني، يعني حتى الناس اللي ما بتحكي لغة عربية أصبح إنهم يطلبوا أعمال باللغة العربية، وهذا الإشي يعني كثير إنه أسعدني وإنه حسسني إنه أنا بديت أوصل للهدف اللي أنا قاعد بشتغل عليه.
شوف بيقول لك ايه متابعيني. He's saying about his followers. Bilal KH Instagram, more than 12,000 followers. Follow it if you already haven't. He's got some amazing work. طب قول لنا حاجة تانية بقى. طبعا احنا عارفين ان احنا كان بقالك 4 سنين ما رجعتش. فقول لي بقى الإحساس ايه اللي انت ترجع بلدك تاني؟
وهذا الاشي اللي انا كنت دائما بحلم فيه، انه في يوم من الايام اني ارجع على قطاع غزة، اشوف اهلي، اشوف اصحابي، اشوف اللوحات اللي انا اشتغلتها ايضا في غزة. بس للاسف يعني رجعنا زي ما انت شايف، لقينا بعض البيوت مدمرة في اخر قصف اسرائيلي. بس يعني هذا يعني متعودين على هيك اشياء، لكن صامدين الحمد لله. بنحاول يعني هم بيهدوا واحنا بنبني ان شاء الله. هم بيصنعوا يعني هم بيخلقوا الموت واحنا بنصنع الحياة والفن من قلب الموت هذا.
Amazing. And like I said, of course, Bilal is part of the history here in Gaza. This is one of his artworks which we're going to talk about, but his work is available everywhere to see when you come into the strip until you leave the strip. قول لنا بقى على ايه اللي عمل بتاعك اللي انت بتحبه اكتر حاجة، اللي انت جيت اول ما جيت رحت اتفرجت عليه.
جدارية طفولة محاصرة على برج الضافر. احنا رسمنا عليه في 2015 بعد سنة من الحرب صورة لبنت صغيرة محبوسة تعبر عن الأطفال المحاصرين في قطاع غزة.
بتكتبه ده ايه معناه وليه بترسم هنا؟
طبعا انا جيت اليوم على منزل دار الشوة اللي في عندهم عريس كان راح يتزوج وبيته انقصف. لقيت القطعة هاي قطعة البطون اللي ما تبقى يعني من البيت، فحبيت اعمل عليها عمل فني نكتب عليها راجعين يا هوا. هي مقطع من أغنية لفيروز بتغني للحب، بتغني للسلام، بتغني إنه إحنا مهما صار راجعين بإذن الله.
So basically, it means despite the rubble, despite the ruins, that this artwork will return and this building will return back to the air. Bilal has just transformed rubble and ruins into art and calligraphy. Bilal, amazing work, man.
حبيبي شكراً.
قول لنا بقى ايه رسالتك لفنانين غزة والفنانين عامة اللي بيتفرجوا على شغلك في جميع أنحاء العالم.
رسالتي لفنانين فلسطين وفنانين غزة، يعني هذا اللي بيعنيني أنا، إنه كل فنان فلسطيني لازم إنه يكون سفير لفلسطين وسفير للبلد، يحاول إنه يوصل رسالة هذا البلد من خلال الفن، سواء فن الجرافيتي، من خلال اللوحات، من خلال المعارض، من خلال التصوير الفوتوغرافي. كل إنسان بيقدر يخدم هذه القضية من خلال الفن أو من خلال أي مجال آخر، إنه يعني ما يستنى أو ما يتوانى عن خدمة هذه القضية.
رسالتك بقى للناس محبينك ومتابعينك في كل السوشيال ميديا اللي هم بيبصوا على شغلك وبيلاقوا يعني انسبيريشن منك.
يعني رسالتي لهم إنه ما حدا يستسلم، كل إنسان بيحاول إنه يصير في يوم من الأيام يعني فنان، أو يعني أنا لسه لحتى الآن قاعد بحاول يعني، ولسه لحتى الآن قاعد بتعلم وبتدرب، يعني يتدربوا ويتعلموا أكثر، يرسموا، يكون في عندهم جرأة، ينزلوا على الشارع يمسكوا السبرايز، يبلشوا يعملوا جرافيتي، يغلطوا مرة واثنين وثلاثة، لكن يعني ما يستسلموا أبداً.
حبيبي man. We're here, that's it, with a Palestinian icon, man like Bilal.
So I think is most important from what he said, and what struck with me a lot is how he said, you know, Israelis create death and we create life out of that death, right? So that to him and to this artist and to a lot of Palestinian artists, and even what in the spoken word piece, right, she said we teach life. And I think that's one of the main themes of Palestinian art as resistance, is taking everything that's supposed to, you know, oppress, occupy, kill you, all of that, and make it into something that where you showcase your resistance and you showcase what you're really about, right? And that is teaching life from preserving life and happiness through this art. Any questions or comments before I keep going? Okay. If you do, just put something in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute and let me know. So the next main symbol of resistance, and what's actually become a way of showcasing art as a symbol of resistance, is the watermelon. Does anyone know already why the watermelon became a symbol of Palestinian resistance?
Colors of the Palestinian flag.
Yes, so it's the colors of the Palestinian flag. And why did they need to use the watermelon? Do you remember? What happened?
Because they ended up banning flags, so they need another way to represent it.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Amir. So at some point, I think it was the 80s, after the first Intifada they're gonna tell us, I think, what specific time period, but the actual Palestinian flag colors and like the drawing of the flag, I think it was after the first Intifada, was banned by Israel, and you could get fined, you could get thrown in jail if you were seen drawing the flag or having the flag out and, you know, and having colors of the flag. So two ways that people responded was, well, okay, we can't have the flag, we're gonna find other things that are the same color of flag. So this video will explain that. I think another really great way that isn't often talked about is a lot of women who stitch tatriz on their thobes, started stitching colors of the flag or the flag itself on the thobe. So the reason that thobes and tatriz are so important in Palestinian culture is they're part of culture, but they're also part of the struggle, because, you know, they're like, well, we're wearing it, so what are you gonna do? Like, are you gonna strip my thobe off of me? And that was the way that women were able to take something like tatriz and something that they were a part of and make it into something very symbolic and a form of resistance too. So those two responses are really, really powerful. And then the watermelon remains as a symbol of this resistance.
What is red, green, white, and black and represents the Palestinian identity? It's not the flag, it's the watermelon. First of summertime in Gaza and the height of watermelon season. Let's talk about the story of how this delicious fruit became a symbol of resistance. The watermelon has become a symbol of Palestinian resistance over several decades, as it reflects the colors of Palestinian flag: red, green, white, and black. But what is the story behind this? In 1967, when Israel occupied the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, Israel's government banned all public displays of the Palestinian flag and its colors. Those who fly the flag in protest on their cars or in the streets could be arrested. Instead, Palestinians got creative, bringing along slices of watermelon to protests. In 1980, Israeli forces shut down a large art gallery in Ramallah and arrested 3 artists, Nabil Anani, Sliman Mansour, and Sam Baddar. During the crackdown, officers vowed to confiscate any paintings that reflected or encouraged Palestinian struggle, including any images of watermelon that mirrored the colors of the Palestinian flag. This encouraged more Palestinians to start using the fruit as a way to fight back. In 1993, at the height of the First Intifada, the New York Times ran a story detailing how the Israeli army had begun detaining any Palestinian caught carrying slices of watermelon. 30 years later, and it's no surprise, the watermelon has cemented its place in Palestinian society, becoming an official symbol for the Palestinian struggle.
من ضمن المعيقات بانه هذا المنتج الجيد اللي افضل منتج احنا قدرنا ننتجه، السوق المحلي مش قادر يستوعبه بسبب وضع الاقتصاد الصعب تبع الناس، كمان عاجزين عن التصدير، ممنوع نصدر بسبب الحصار المفروض على قطاع غزة. فاحنا وين بدنا نروح فيه؟ لو انا بقدر اصدره ممكن يساعدني في سد وتحسين وضع السعر تبعي لاقدر اني ما اخسرش. بس بنعاني كمان من وجودنا على الحدود، بدك تنسيق عشان تصل للبطيخ، واحيانا بكونش فيه، احيانا في يكون احداث، احيانا بصير تجريف، احيانا يعني انت من يوم ما تزرع وانت في قلق حتى تقطف.
In the heat of summer, watermelons are sold on nearly every street corner in Gaza and across Palestine, and eaten more than any other fruit. قلنا كيف بنقي البطيخ، يلا تعال. We check its sounds, you know. طيب. ايش إذا كانت ايش؟
بالطوب يعني بتكون مرملة متفلة.
تمام. حاجة ثانية ايش كمان؟
هذه مرة نطة حلوة. بطيخة نظيف.
يعني هذا تمام 100% مسؤوليته؟ طب هات السكين يلا. It's red and very sweet, really.
كل واحد بروح تعبان من شغله بلاقي الكهرباء قاطعة، باخذ له شوية بطيخ، ببرد على حاله، باكله هو واولاده، وبقعد هو واولاده، وبعدين بطيخنا ما تنساش من البيت حنون، اراضي بيت حنون، بطيخ كويس ومرتب.
So I'm going to stop that one there. I think, you guys can get the gist of how, because of the colors, but then also beyond the colors, what the watermelon does. Like he said, you go home, there's no electricity, it's hot, you can't have AC, whatever it is, you can have some watermelon. So even in just making life a little bit better, even though that might sound like, corny or cheesy, but making it better, just bringing some good and sweet aspect of life. Sometimes things that we take for granted, right, is very important, always prevalent for Palestine. So it's something interesting to think of. And the banning of the flags and colors of the flags and part of Palestinian resistance is not just something that's happened in the past. It's actually a tool that Israel is picking back up. So I want to, before I move us on, I want you guys to think of, and maybe we can answer it towards the end actually as our last reflecting questions. Why, right? Ask yourself why. What makes the Palestinian flag so dangerous for Israelis that they need to ban it and arrest people who do it, or go into a gallery and take artists? So sometimes we think that, it's just the activists and the people on the ground with, or the people in DC who are being like actively persecuted for their Palestinian resistance, but artists are as well. And so really thinking of what makes this art so dangerous for Israelis and why do they feel the need to do that. Okay, so now to take us into digital art, more social media activism and just like online activism. I know all of you are probably really familiar with it, and especially in the last couple of years, we've seen, at least I've seen a lot more conversations about Palestine on social media than I've ever seen before. And then this is an artist who engages in a lot of digital activism for Palestine.
Hafez Omar, an art activist, remembers the first time he was inspired by political art. It was during the First Intifada in 1987, when Palestinians rose up in mass popular civil disobedience aimed at ending the occupation. International political pressure faced by Israel convinced it to begin peace talks with the Palestinians, which led to the Oslo Accords, a deal to create a two-state solution. That never materialized, and life under Israeli occupation continues till this day. Hafez's art aims to challenge the Israeli narrative and attempts to block their voices on social media.
There's a lot of lies going around. There's a lot of illusion they're trying to put into people's heads, especially the new generations, those generations that didn't live the second Intifada or didn't see all the aspects of the occupation. Our role as artists, as people who can, deliver messages, is to show them, is to tell them the truth, tell them their history, tell them their reality as it is.
More than half of the Palestinian population is under the age of 30, and they've never known anything else other than living under Israeli occupation. They've also never seen this promise that was made to previous generations by the Oslo Accords, and that is an independent state.
We look out at a world built on division and privilege.
Salem Barahmeh started an online video campaign called Uncivilized.
And told you are unworthy.
It focuses on the nuances of language when it comes to oppression and human rights abuses.
The concept behind Uncivilized is not just about Palestine, but it's a global thing. It's about how there's been double standards and really a racist approach in the way brown and black people have been covered for a very long time. Just look at the way Palestine is covered by Western media.
Many Palestinian youngsters we spoke to say the resistance against Israeli occupation is no longer one-dimensional and has moved beyond only protesting on the streets.
Changing the narrative is not going to liberate Palestine on its own, but it's such an important part because it's about redefining a new reality that moves us beyond Oslo, which really entrenched apartheid and the one-state reality we live under. So it's about defining the future, defining what we want and how we get there, and to leave the past behind.
With Palestinian youth increasingly disenfranchised with life under occupation, they're finding their voice in more ways than one, and to challenge those in power. Step, they say, in holding Israel accountable. Zara Khairat, Al Jazeera. Hafez Omar.
So I think this is a cool way of showing how like new generations and youth are also engaging in this. So even if you can't like do mural art yourself or some like other forms of art, that there are ways that everyone can engage in this. And I think that's something for you all to think of too, as something that you might be interested in. So the last video I want to show, this is part of a longer documentary. I'm gonna stop, I think it's up right here. I was debating watching more of it with all of you, to be very honest, but some parts of it are a little hard to watch. I'm gonna give you all the option to watch it as you want on your own, with parents, whatever you feel like you're comfortable with. But for the sake of this specific class today, we're gonna watch just about 5 minutes of it. If we feel like we want to watch more, I can keep it going. If you want to watch it on your own, you can too. This is the whole documentary is about different forms of art and different ways that people across Palestine, not just in the West Bank and Gaza, and I think it touches on in the middle of 48, have used art and taken up art forms as a way of resisting. And it's called Longing for Palestine, Art of Resistance. Palestinians turn instruments of death into installations, graffiti, and rap. So if you're interested, this is fully available online. It'll be up on the Google Classroom. Some parts of it, especially in the beginning, are just hard to watch. I don't know what everyone is comfortable with. So I'm gonna just show us this portion right here.
أنا هان بعد الأحداث بيوم باجي بجمع الطلقات اللي استخدمتها إسرائيل ضد المواطنين الفلسطينيين. في هذا المكان خطر جدا. أنا بجيب بنتي بتساعدني دايما، بنتي الصغيرة شاهد.
هاي واحدة.
هاي شوف هذه كيف يدخل. هذا متفجر، هذا خطر. تمسكاش. الطويلة طلع علي. الطويلة يا بابا ما تمسكاش، في الرصاص الطويلة زي هذا تمسكاش بالمرة، اوكي؟ اغلب الرصاص اللي بنجيبه كله من المستشفيات ومن المناطق اللي فيها خطوط التماس زي الحدود والمناطق اللي كانت معرضة للقصف في الحروب والاجتياحات. الحمام وين الحمام هي؟ جابت غير أمير زينة.
Do you go to demonstrations?
رحت قبل هيك أكثر مرة. أخذتها مرة بعدين رحت على الجبل.
رحت مرة أيام ما تصوب سيلفي. بيومها رحنا وبعديها قال لي ما ترجعيش.
أخوي أحمد اتصل علي وهو كان في مشارك مسيرة العودة. الطلقة اللي كانت في رجله في اللحم هنا استقرت في المنطقة هذه. طلعوها أكثر من قطعة صغيرة، فأنا عملت منها مجسم تكون ذكرى له. كنت أعملها تمثال أحطه في رقبته ما زبطش، فأنا اضطريت أعملها إيش؟ أعملها قاعدة صغيرة وأحطها هنا. هذا مخيم العودة بالكامل. هدول الصحفيين، الطيارات، الدبابات الإسرائيلية، القناصة، الخيام، الإسعافات. هذا المخيم اللي على الحدود أنا عملته من الرصاص ومن شرايط الدبابات. هذا رصاصة. عملت كمان اللي هو تمثال العودة اللي هو الأسير خارطة فلسطين مفتاح العودة، السلك الشائع، نجمة إسرائيل. وكمان عملت هو المعاناة اللي رسمناها للقضية الفلسطينية. المعاناة أم ابنها مستشهد في ايدها حتى من عجينة السيراميك. أنا إسرائيل بتتهم إنه الفلسطينيين بيستخدموا الطائرات الورقية اللي هي الطائرات الورقية بحرق الأشجار والمزروعات الفلسطينية. فاحنا بنذكر إسرائيل إنه في 2008 إسرائيل استخدمت البلدوزر بخلع الأشجار الفلسطينية وتدمير البيوت والاجتياحات اللي تعرضت لها المدن الفلسطينية من دبابات المركافة ناقلات الجنود والبلدوزر. استخدمت إسرائيل هذه اللوحة كاملة عن الاجتياح لإسرائيل للمدن الفلسطينية. فبعديها اجت فكرة الشهيد اللي هو الصحفي ياسر مرتجى لما استشهد. فأنا عملت له، بديت أفكر كل حاجة بتصير على الأرض أنا أعملها. طيب يعني هذه قوة الصحافة استهدفوها. هذا الدرع هذا بقعد دم الصحفي.
Israel's army insists that it only opens fire in retaliation and always investigates the deaths of innocent civilians.
يلا خلصنا. أنا هذا عملتها من الرطح. حولت طلقة رصاص الإسرائيلي حولتها لحمامة سلام من تحويل الطلقات أدوات القتل لمواد سلمية. فهذه هي الطلقات اللي بتستخدمها إسرائيل ضد الشعب الفلسطيني، وهذه المجسمات اللي احنا بنعملها من هذا الرصاص.
At night, when you can't see the destruction or lack of resources, Gaza is just like any other Mediterranean seaside resort. except that people often approach to say you're welcome in Gaza, ask to take photos, and thank you for visiting them.
مش حنضلنا مأمنين انه الوضع سيء فاحنا بدنا نعيش عيشه سيئه، لا احنا بنحب الحياه، كلنا بندعي للرساله هذه، العالم كلها تشوف الحياه اللي احنا عايشين. انا هي زميلك كلنا خريجين جامعه ومخلصين، عندك محامي
احنا بندور على بصيص امل انه احنا نصنع لنفسنا السعاده في ظل الاوضاع الراهنه الموجوده اللي كنا بنعرفها، يعني من حصار وقتل ودمار.
ايش رايكم بالمسيرات اللي بتصير على الحدود؟
هيك انت.
انا ضد.
انا ضد.
وبشده وبشده وبشده.
انا كمان. ليش؟
فعليا خرب الدنيا يعني. يعني ببعتوه منها بموتوا وبتطخبخوا اعاقات وبتترمى النسوان وناس بتموت ومن دون نتائج، النتائج تنعكس كلها لمصالح شخصيه فقط، التلفون واحد كله يروح، تلفون واحد كله يروح.
مجرد انه انا عايش فانا بخدم بلدي، انا بدرس وبقدم لبلدي، فانا هيك بخدمها، ولما اتزوج واجيب اولاد فانا بخدم بلدي. بحب الله، احنا بنحبش الموت.
تكبير واحد على الجامع كله بهلل وبيطلع ومحدش فاهم حاجه، بروحوا بيرجعوا معاقين، وهذا اللي حيكون عايشين على عديم المجتمع لانه حرام ظلم.
الفكره استنبطناها كانت في نهايه.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop that one there. What did you guys think about? Obviously, there's a lot more to that documentary, but what did you guys think about that part that we watched and what the man does with the bullets? And then also that last part, there was another guy saying, you know, he doesn't believe in the protests, and what they do instead is like educate themselves and build their homes and just stay alive, and that's a way of representing their country. So what do you guys think about that dialogue, and how do you, I guess this takes us back to that first question, is do you think this is useful? What do you think is most useful ways or tools of resistance? And just we can end the class talking about that. So any thoughts or comments about it? Do you think it makes a difference or an impact what this man is doing with the bullets? Or do you agree with the second person who was saying, I guess not agree, but or what do you think about the second person who was saying, you know, he doesn't think that the protests do much and that there's other things that they can do. So these are moments where, you know, you guys are thinking through this and you guys are the next generation who's invested in, cares about the Palestinian struggle. So these are important questions and thoughts for you guys to start thinking about. So I think we can end by just, you know, we can go around, try to answer or let me know your thoughts on this, and then we can end a little bit early for today. So does anyone want to start us off, or I can call on people? I know Amir stepped away for a little bit, so Malik or Musa or Ghazi, any general thoughts about what are the best tools or ways for resistance?
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like the best like general way to just put the message out there, I feel like all the ways are really good. I feel like the best way to really show it out is, I feel like art, I guess, murals. The guy was doing all that stuff on the walls, you know, saying how basically the message was that the building would be rebuilt one day. I think that really was more touching than other things. The music was also one of the best things. Just to go and get out all the message and how what's actually happening in the Gaza Strip and what's happening in the oppression all around Palestine. I feel like it really just shows, like, just the art just shows all of like the I guess, suffering, I guess, that some people in the Gaza Strip have to go through just because of the messages that it shows and because of the artwork and the, I guess, mural of the girl behind bars. It just shows how the Palestinian children don't really have much options. That's what I really got from that. Just
Yeah.
shows how the Palestinian children, they don't have much options compared to us, who we have all these jobs that we could go to, all these things that we could do, all these opportunities that we have on the table. But they could almost never have that since they just live under oppression as a refugee.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Musa. I think I agree. I think the using art kind of it makes it public and it puts it out there where people can't really ignore it, right? It's easy to ignore what's happening in the world and say, I don't care, I don't want to have a say in this. But when you publicly put art out that big and on display, then you really are forcing people not to ignore it. So thanks, Musa. I agree. Anyone else? Yeah, Ghazi.
I just wanted to talk about those last two people that were like kind of arguing about whether protesting was like worth it or not almost. And I think that both sides have a really good point. Like the guy that was saying you should protest, because if you're not protesting, it's almost kind of like you're giving up and you're letting in. But also a lot of the protests do just lead to dead Palestinians and nothing else. So in my opinion, I think that like the like unplanned protesting of just throwing rocks or doing like something dumb like that will just get you killed, I think that isn't worth it. But I think that it is still important to find other ways to protest and send the message, like through art.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think I agree. I think strategic protesting that leads to something is always a bit more beneficial. I think so. The protest that they were referring to, I think it's 2018 Gaza. Every Friday, people in Gaza along the fence border that Israel created that separates Gaza from the rest of Palestine, were meeting up at that border, and just like large amounts of people were protesting every Friday. And Israel, of course, was attacking back with like rubber bullets and tear gas and killing people. So that's what they were referring to. I think, I think that was also really powerful because it did bring media attention to what's happening, and it showed, like a large group of people, like the Intifadas, for example, were both started through people going out on the streets and protesting. But I agree that I think there needs to be some strategy behind it. There needs to be some achievable goal, so that it doesn't just feel like it's more people going out and getting killed. And I think it's important to think of the difference, like when we protest, right, versus when people in Palestine protest. Like when we protest, you go to a protest, but you're most probably going to come back home, you're going to be okay. So I think also thinking of what are the ways that we protest here for Palestine, and do we just show up to protest when it's happening and leave and not do anything, which unfortunately I think has become what most people do, especially for Palestine. You go to a protest, you take some pictures, you feel good about it, and then you go home and you don't do anything else. So I think asking ourselves the what else and what more can I do in addition to that protest is really important. And I think what I want to leave you all with, and Malik or Amit, if you guys want to share anything too, please do. But I think the main thing is, I don't think that there is one way to achieve liberation, and I don't think there's one right way to achieve liberation. I think there's there's many different ways, and there's many different strategies. There's many people with different passions and skills, and we need everyone doing that in their own way, with a collective goal. And so sometimes we also get stuck in, no, that doesn't work, and I don't agree with you, so I'm going to go do my own thing, and we're not going to talk together, and that's not really beneficial either. So we don't want to think of ourselves as working against each other, but just working in different ways and different things, but we all have the same end goal. And I think that that is what is most important. So if someone in Gaza wants to protest, that's great. If someone wants to get his degree and focus on his family, that's great, as long as the goal is the same for everyone at the end. Malik or Amir, I don't know if Amir is back, but do you guys want to share any last thoughts or comments before we end?
Hello? I agree that art is like one of the best ways you could spread a message, especially how like talented most Palestinians are. if your art is more beautiful, it's gonna catch your eye more often. Especially how I've seen them. Like when I was in Palestine like 2 years ago, it was crazy. I saw like the most beautiful murals like ever about free Palestine and the victims and stuff. It was beautiful, and it caught my attention. And I went home that day, like where I was in Palestine, and I was just thinking about it a lot. Like I remember that day clearly because I went to the Quds that day,
Oh yeah.
and when you pass like the Israeli checkpoint, there was like a lot on the walls. There was like murals everywhere, and it was so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think it, and then what you're saying is important. It caught your eye as someone who was there. It makes you feel more passionate. It makes you want to be involved. It brings people into the struggle. And I think, art at the checkpoints is very intentional and strategic because the checkpoint is the symbol of your oppression. And so to go and to put art on it and make it something else that is a way of like reclaiming it. Like this is what Israel puts to oppress us, but we're going to go and we're going to make it something that is, that like we're going to use to show how wrong it is, right? Or that we're going to reclaim it and make it ours. So sometimes art is powerful in that way too. So thanks, Malik, for sharing that. I'm not sure if Amita's back, but that was everything I had for today. I just want to end with reminding you guys of the questions that we're going to go around and you guys are going to answer on our last day. So next week, we're going to focus on just in general solidarity, how to think about Palestine with other social justice issues. And then the last week on the 16th, we're going to talk about what you all can do moving forward, because that will be our last class. And then we're just going to ask you to think through and answer these 6 questions, and that's going to help us guide the conversation of what we can all do after. So just a reminder, they are on Google Classroom if you want to try to think about them before, but no pressure because I will give you some time on that last class too. Any questions, comments, thoughts, feelings? Okay, thanks everyone for a great class, and I will see you all next week.